We've lost you now.
The common user profile format. Sorry, I will just start sharing the screen again. Please excuse me for a moment. So I am starting from the slide number 5.
Might be best to start from an earlier slide, just so we're sure we understand things.
Yeah, sure. So is my slides visible now?
I don't have it, but maybe.
Oh, now?
It says that you started screen share. Yes, we've got it. That's it.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I will try to finish it quickly. So the definition, just to reiterate quickly, so the user model is the set of user characteristics or a set of variable. And when we instantiate the user model, we term it as a user profile, and the definitions were decided during the working of the UVUMS cluster. And the utility is that we will store a description of user in a machine readable form, and then multiple devices, both audiovisual media as well as physical devices like a washing machine or maybe a microwave oven or even your smartwatch, they can adapt their user interface based on your range of abilities. The security aspects is whenever we are talking about storing user data, security aspects is one big question. So this format does not specify the physical or network media for storage, and also it doesn't talk about any encryption. Rather, it only aims to create a format of description which the third party application can decide that how to use it. And there are also provision in which case the user profile information will never be shared. Rather, it will be stored only on a client machine, or it can also be shared with a trusted source, or a subset of the information can be shared. So the user profile doesn't depend on sharing critical user information. There are various ways we can integrate this user profile. So in the upcoming 3-4 slides, I will show you some example. And we can store it on the server side and run a server side program which will adapt user interface based on the user profile, or we can store it on a client machine, say for example your handheld device like a smartphone or maybe a smartwatch, and we can develop programs which will change your user interface based on your range of abilities. And when I am talking about changing, this change can happen at the only for a single application. It can happen for a set of application by modifying a web browser, or it can also be implemented for the whole operating system. Like in a later example, I will show such an example from a digital TV application we worked on in early 2010 to 13. So this is one example of the application of the common user profile for interface for a advisor. This is the rendering of the screen was changed based on different range of visual impairment. The similar system has also been extended for a smartphone-based application by colleagues at University College London. And here we can also changing the appearance of user interface for a web-based system, where we integrated the system using choosing appropriate style sheets. And this is one screenshot from a home automation application for our digital TV framework project, EU GRITE project, in which the whole digital TV framework was adapted based on the user profile format. And by adaptation, we mean that the spacing among icons, the color contrast, the font size, and so on. In the next presentation, you can see more examples of personalization. And it can also be extended to vehicular case studies, because in vehicle we have multiple displays like head-up display, head-down display, and there are provision of storing user profile. And the same user interface can be used to simulate impairment. That means seeing through the eyes of a person who has visual impairment, or visualize the cursor movement or hand movement pattern of a person has different types of motor impairment. So in conclusion, the aim of the common user profile format to reduce the digital divide and personalize systems and services to promote accessibility, and making a common format for sharing personalizing information so that you need not to sign up multiple times for getting the same accessibility service. And end of day, we want to help conformance to the human CRPD. And my acknowledgement to my team members at my laboratory. So with that, I will stop talking. I think I around took 50 seconds more time, and I will be happy to answer any question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you mind if we save the questions for the discussion period at the end for all the presentations? But if you have some thoughts, please type them out in the Q&A thing at the bottom. Incidentally, congratulations to Rochelle. I've checked those closed captions, which were really, really good, in spite of perhaps some broken audio now and again. So well done, Rochelle, for that. Our next speaker is Andy Quested, one of the BBC's top engineers. Did I read that right? And he's going to talk about personalization, which is a topic which he's really initiated in the IRG-AVA. And Andy, if you would, because your presentation overlaps to some degree with that of Giovanni Galvez using artificial intelligence. If you don't mind, would you give your presentation now and then hand over to Giovanni for his? So, Andy, please take the floor.
Thank you, David. What I would say quickly to the team, could they possibly put the link up for the translated captioning again? Some people did miss it right at the very beginning, but what will be good will be to have a seamless session between myself and Giovanni, because mine is about how we effectively start to personalize audio, video, and other accessibility options to create a much better experience for all. So I will now share my screen. Just confirm, David, that you can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, we've got your screen, Andy. No problem. Go
Accessibility
ahead.
through personalization. I'm quite keen on the fact that we should think about accessibility as not as a completely separate idea, but as a way of personalizing your experience. And the idea is to in fact actually look at what the WHO and the United Nations and the charters and the conventions are actually looking at, and saying that the number of persons with disabilities of various types and degrees is growing, primarily because of an aging population, and the access to media is becoming more and more important in our daily lives, as well as just for entertainment. And we should not put any barrier to anybody being disadvantaged from getting access to both entertainment, to news, and to comment, and to social interaction, which has become obviously very much more important over the last few months. So redefining accessibility. Within the convention, there are certain rights that virtually every country in the world has signed up to. The freedom of expression and opinion, Article 21, the right to education, 24, the right to health, 25, the right to work, 27, the right to participate in political and public life, 29, and the right to participate in cultural life, 30. Now, the last one is obvious from my background. This is about television, radio, and entertainment. But if you think about what's happened since the beginning of this year, all the others are now absolutely critical for both media interaction and for the way we are working and living our lives now. And some of that won't ever go back to the way it was before, because these are much better ways of doing it. And connectivity is becoming really one of the rights of the populations of many territories. So what do we mean? What questions should we ask? I'm often asked this, and I'm going to concentrate on television, cinema, radio, very simple questions. Why do we consider access services to be either on or off? You know, are these really the only options they have? Why do actually some, and I won't mention any names of producers, why do actually some people think that accessible options interfere with creative intent? Making something more accessible may change how it looks or feels or sounds, but why should that be something that a content creator doesn't want? Why do we only really consider sound and vision accessibility options? We're asking people to interact with our content far more. And we have to recognize that as we get older, we don't necessarily work at the same speed as a teenager, and programs are made for all. The worst one is, why is it always different on different platforms? Even if on TV platforms it can be different, but certainly can be different between laptops, phones, between gaming devices and TVs, between set-top boxes, and the way you want to interact with your television. And why do we expect, once we've done it, the same model to fit everybody? You have captions or you do not have captions. You have signing or you do not have signing. And finally, we always develop a service and then we think, oh, we better make it accessible then, hadn't we, to some degree? And mine is, content is born accessible. You start before the script. Accessibility starts at the lens and ends at the screen. So we need to start to reconsider all these options. And this actually does start to make it personal. It's a personal experience, a personal sound experience, personal vision experience, personal interaction, and personal understanding. So
Sorry, I cannot hear.
Andy, is there a problem with slide change for you?
Let me have a quick look. I'm sorry about that. Let me come back. It did say something about my screen sharing being paused just after I did that. So
well, if it's paused, I believe if you have a Windows computer, I believe you have to press Alt-T.
No, are you now seeing my
yes,
my screen again?
We are.
I don't know why that happened. Yes. It just suddenly came up with pause. So apologies. Yeah. Confirm you can see and hear this.
Twin bloggers Herman and Haroda lost their hearing as children. They recently headed to a nightclub to try out a prototype shirt with 16 haptic sensors that respond to different music frequencies.
Oh my God, wow, it was emotional. Yeah, same, I got emotional. It was a strong reaction. Yeah, it's like there's different instruments playing. I can't describe it. It's just, you have to experience it, really.
I'm very excited that Comcast introduced the new technology. It allows me to utilize my eyes to operate the remote on a tablet. I don't need to depend on others to use the remote, and that is a liberating feeling. Technology is enabling me to be more independent.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here again. Winning Britain's Got Talent the last year changed my life completely. But, as you can see, I haven't let it go to my head. I hate that we have so many politically correct words to describe disabled people now. It's all special needs, special schools, Special Olympics. That is why it always alarms me when I hear about special forces going to war.
I think you can probably see that accessibility is moving away from very, very traditional ideas. And what we really mean when we rethink accessibility is about seeing, hearing, participating, and understanding, and about a range of options. And that range of options is personal and can change not just person to person, but between a person's teenage years and a person's old age, or actually depending on the environment. And we do notice that now that one of the largest users of captioning in the UK currently are people on the London Underground, which is far too noisy, old and noisy. So having subtitles or captions on content means they don't have to blast their ears too loudly while they're watching their favorite content. And we can see this as a set of dynamic changes, a personalized options, profiles that we can add to various outputs to make them easier and more accessible. So who's leading? Deliberately a typeface that many will recognize from Microsoft. Gaming. There is an organization, Can I Play That, that does reviews of gaming based on the accessible options available. And one of the last games they reviewed actually was the most accessible in the world, they said at that particular point. But the key thing they said, and the key thing that they've discovered, is more players equals more money. So making something accessible is no longer the idea of making something that is expensive, over the top, and does not get value for money back. In pure economic terms, return on investment is growing for accessibility if we treat it in the right way. But it's about personal stories, and when we share this presentation afterwards, that each one of these is a link that you can have a look at personal stories about people who are seeing accessibility change and the companies that are driving it. So to sum up, accessibility, I think, is quality of experience. There's no measure of the quality of experience that we can safely say is accurate and repeatable. It's personal. If you enjoy something and you weren't inconvenienced by the fact you couldn't hear it properly, you couldn't see it properly, you couldn't interact with it properly, or you couldn't understand it properly, then actually you have the great quality of experience. It won't happen all at once, and it is about recognizing ethical and cultural diversity. We are different, and we should recognize the fact that some cultural diversity is really important in how we frame our access services. We need to recognize and describing services requirements. We need to recognize that we need to describe these requirements. It's no good just saying, hey, let's add captions. We need to really think, what do we mean by the captions? We recognize that everybody benefits from a more personal experience. It was a great clip at the end of that Comcast video that when you make something accessible, make it a better experience for all. And we need to recognize the technology enablers. And this is where I think we're demonstrating one of these enablers today. And I'm now going to hand over to Giovanni, who will take us through what they've been doing with machine learning and automated and AI captioning from human origination. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that introduction. My name is Giovanni Galvez with a company called SyncWords. And one of the things that we've done for this year is we have focused a lot on taking advantage of the accuracy of human live captioning and leveraging machine translation to deliver real-time subtitling in many different languages. If you didn't get a chance, please check out on the link that you see on this slide, and you can see it in action. You can also look at that on your mobile phone and switch languages. Let me talk a little bit about this solution because it's a very interesting solution. When we were approached by certain broadcasters and service companies that we've worked with, service companies meaning people who actually do live captioning, they were very concerned about coming up with the right solution for this. Accuracy was critical. And they oftentimes have 30 events happening all at once. They sometimes have TV channels that are 24/7, live news translated in real time. And of course, being able to scale that, right? If say they are required to do 4, 5, maybe even 10 languages simultaneously for live, how could that happen You know, how can you also worry about the budget not being completely, you know, gone if you have to do this in real time every day? And so there was a lot of aspects to this that were very challenging. So what we did is we were able to take their existing broadcast workflow and then connect it to machine translation. And that was critical because they cannot change what they currently do, right? This is something really important. What they have right now is mission critical. It's already set in stone. And oftentimes you can't ask a broadcaster to change their entire workflow to add something new. So this was a way to take their existing live human captioners, connect it to a cloud system, and then in real time take the protocol that they're using for broadcast and convert it to something that can be used for internet delivery, right? And of course, we have to make sure that we can also pass that through to existing television equipment, right? Furthermore, finding the right live streaming player for live streaming workflows was really critical, a player that could support multiple languages all at once. So when you talk about typical machine translation, typically people think of it as something that's pre-recorded, right? So you have an English document, for example, you send that to machine translation, and then you can get it to different languages, right? Something like you would go to the website um, on Google and translate something. But for live, it's a whole different animal. And the way we approached it was uh, looking at ingest and setup, then doing the real time and then the real time delivery. So being able to take their captioning feeds, right? In this case, it could be 30, 40, 50 a day, connecting that to our cloud mechanism, and then in real time feeding that in an effective way to machine translation. At that point, we could deliver this to online meetings, such as the one we're doing right now, as well as delivering to live streaming and live broadcasts in different languages, right? And this was all something that we had to do in real time. We had to integrate with scheduling of human captioners, and we were able to do this seamlessly in a very short amount of time. So what are some of the outcomes and benefits of that, right? In the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as well as other parts of the world, I'm sure in Europe as well, it's the law. It's required to do live captioning, especially for television. And of course, in government agencies, education settings, that's also required. But people, they could spend a lot of money in that. And adding live translation is a way to get a more return of investment on the money that you're already investing in accessibility by adding multiple languages, right? To increase viewership, to increase accessibility, to reach new audiences that, for example, have English as a second language. And an example of something that's in production today is this particular broadcaster, NHK World Japan. Their live 24/7 news channel is being translated live in multiple different languages. Here's an example of that. So you go to their website, choose the language that you need.
And I would like to point out the power of this massive Kuroshio current. Take a look at the circulation of these mid-latitude ocean currents in the North Pacific. The Kuroshio current is marked in red.
So as we're receiving, in this case, 608 protocol from the live captioner, we're then converting that to plain text, sending it to the machine translation, and then displaying it on this live streaming player. So this is really our focus, right? Accuracy. And the only way to get that level of accuracy is to leverage a human captioner and then doing the machine translation. So the more accurate the human captioner is, then the machine translation can get to that level of accuracy as well. And this is something that's absolutely ready for prime time. So how does it work? Just in the technical side, we went away for streaming from the typical 608 protocol. And instead, when we receive the captions to the cloud, we're creating a sidecar subtitle stream. So it's separate from the audio and video. We're using the VTT specification for live streaming. And that means that we can do any language that we need. We're not limited to just Latin characters, right? And at that point, we can send it to the CDN, and then the CDN doesn't need to do any transcoding. They don't have to change their workflow for their streaming. And then we can stack as many languages as we want for the live stream. At that point, the player application would just work. You can just change from one language to the other seamlessly, right? And that's something that that worked quite well. By moving away from the typical streaming captioning that's only supporting one language and limiting in those languages to certain characters, to being able to do as many languages as we need for live events and not being limited to any character set. So this worked quite well. And that is my presentation. If you'd like to contact me, this is my email. Otherwise, we can talk about it during the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. And I'm sure there's a lot to talk about and think about there, and you'll all be thinking about profiles, personalization, the scope for AI use, and so on, the benefits, and we can come back to that. But right now, let's go to our fourth panelist, who is an old friend, Masahito Kawamori. He's one of the people most renowned in the world for caring about media accessibility. He's a professor in Japan, and we specifically asked him to come along to talk about accessibility in the CV19 environment. I think he's going to have his slides operated by Kaoru, but
Yes.
assuming that at least we'll hear him talk and see his face, Masahito, would you like to take the floor, please?
Okay, thank you very much, David, for your kind introduction. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here and to present my presentation on the accessibility introduction to the COVID-19 situation. Thank you very much. So I'd like to move on to the next slide, please. So COVID-19 is unprecedented pandemic. We can say we know that so far there are close to 14 million people affected by COVID-19 worldwide, and about 600,000 people have died from it. And the number is still growing. The COVID-19 is probably the worst global disaster after World War II. And COVID-19 affects everyone, everywhere, but the result is not always equal. So next, please. The most affected people, severely affected people, are the vulnerable people, vulnerable segment of the population. And especially in particular, persons with disabilities are the ones most severely affected. As the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, said in his statement that the world's 1 billion people living with disabilities are among the hardest hit by COVID-19. So we were surprised that there are 1 billion people with disabilities that are coping with this situation. Persons with disabilities face a lack of accessible public health information and significant barrier to implement basic hygiene measures. They lack access to vital information to cope with the situation. Next, please. So I'd like to introduce this video that the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asian Pacific created to introduce the situation for the persons with disabilities in Asian Pacific. And that will be a lesson for all. Please play the video.
persons with disabilities in Asia Pacific, already excluded before COVID-19. The disability community faces new normals. COVID-19 is our new reality.
I can't afford to get infected. COVID-19 infection means certain death for me.
No money, no food, no medicine, no soap. Everything stopped. What if my parents die?
No tourists, no money. No flights, no tourists, no money.
This lockdown has been so difficult for Naeem, who has autism. He has broken his iPad and his keyboard just because of this.
COVID-19 information for the public is not always made accessible to persons with disabilities, especially those of us who rely on the use of computer screen reading software.
Persons with psychosocial disabilities who are institutionalized are at much greater risk. They have access to a very few amount of information.
All health systems are stretched. Tough call, who to save and who to let die.
We have crippling expenses and empty coffers. It is now so difficult to raise funds. Adapt to thrive.
In Bangladesh, CDT and many other organizations of persons with disabilities distribute relief packages, create awareness, and promote teletherapy in community for our fellow persons with disabilities. But the good thing is that we have a long-term partnership with the Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief, and they have issued this directive to all district commissioners to implement disability-inclusive COVID-19 responses.
We use Filipino Sign Language. When COVID-19 started, the media did not have sign language interpretation. We deaf persons broke information barriers. Now we have sign language interpretation for the news. We relay medical consultations and information with easy-to-understand infographics. We hope to partner with our government and experts for sustainable, accessible sign language communication systems.
In the new reality, we must adapt to new normals.
Every life matters. We are 618 million. We are fourth.
Leave us not behind.
Leave us not behind.
Leave us not behind.
Leave us not behind.
Let us not behind.
Leave us not behind. Leave us not behind.
Leave us not behind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Masahito. I wanted to draw in our good friend Pilar Orero, if she's on and could switch on her camera and microphone. But before that, Masahito, I think it's a very compelling case. And leave us not behind. But who do you think should be doing what at the moment to make this situation better? Do you have any suggestions or views based on your experience about how we could move forward to help people with differences in this CV-19 environment? What do you think?
For example, yeah, it's a very good question. Of course, governments can do a lot, but also it's the case in the Philippines, for example, that we just saw Filipino deaf community has cooperated with the local broadcasters to provide live sign language interpretation on broadcasting. So I think as Gio's presentation just made clear, that we can combine ICT, like internet technologies, with OTT technology and broadcasting technology to provide accessible programs, for example. I think that's a good way to move forward. Of course, we will need some legal framework to allow that, but for the time being, because of the emergency, I think it's one way to go forward, to create a sort of a team or consortium to work together.
Thanks. And I see Pilar is there. Hello.
Hello.
Barcelona, if I got that right.
Yes.
You've also looked into, haven't you, the issue of the COVID environment and so on. Is there anything that you'd like to add or suggest, perhaps that came out of Masahito's presentation for you? How could we move forward with this?
I think, good morning or good afternoon to everyone. I think one of the most interesting problems that we had, it was that solved by Giovanni's technology, and is that small languages don't have the technology to go to automatic subtitling or automatic anything. So while all these platforms, all these automatic subtitling that was available for the platforms were okay for English, then the rest of the world who does not speak English then is terribly challenged. So language is again a type of disability that should be taken into consideration on top of any physical or cognitive disability. So adding language disability, I think it would be also an interesting step forward to be identified, to then challenge it, to solve it.
What does this mean? Do we need a document, a paper, a project, or something?
I think the approach that Andy is taking and Pradipta, this approach that they're taking of having the universal, a common profile where we can already identify what are the challenges. I think it's a good idea. If we had everything available, a menu of available technologies, and then you can identify what is good for you. I think that would be a great step forward. And I think what Andy is proposing, what Pradipta is proposing, I think is the way forward, because then we are no longer narrowing to cognitive disabilities, physical disabilities, sensorial disabilities, language disabilities. In fact, all of us are a combination of all these disabilities. So there is, I think, a wider approach, which in fact is a personalized approach, is the way forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, are there any issues of privacy in that, do you think, Pilar, or?
I think it is a bit sad in the sense that at the same time that we are trying to challenge, to go against barriers, data, all this technology is sucking data, and it's the data protection laws that they are again trying to fight these companies getting data from end users, but they need data. So we are again in this power struggle, where data is required to go towards an automation. At the same time, that data can't be obtained for legal purposes. So how, it would be very interesting on how to solve this issue of using data without taking any personal data towards solving the issue.
I think it's Andy here. I think what you've just said is really, really important, because what I would hate to see is one part of the UN taking another part to court, saying that actually data protection is discriminatory. But that's effectively what is happening.
This is what is happening. Also, the other interesting thing about data and big data is that people with disabilities are not represented in big data properly. So again, I think the idea and this idea of personalization, it is very important, because then big data is always skewed, is always, we have seen that very well in the cases of Black people in the US, and how automatic recognition really makes terrible mistakes. So I think, and this solution would be fantastic, but we have to, again, respect privacy laws.
So if we can join up the worlds of profiles with personalization and create a new world, and maybe that's something that we could touch on at our October meeting, if you agree, and hopefully we'll have some interesting discussions on that then. I just had a personal question, if I might. I remembered, I have an uncle who has to lip read all the time. I was going to the shops yesterday, seeing everybody with face masks on. I wondered how on earth he was going to cope with that. I didn't have an answer. I don't know if anybody else knows what I should suggest there, but perhaps we need cellophane face masks or something like that.
Yeah, okay. They're in the market.
They are. Okay.
They're in the market. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can.
There is a question from a colleague about whether the language system can do Burmese. Is Giovanni there? What are the limitations on languages? And what about Burmese? Come on.
Yeah, sure. So on the output side, we absolutely can do Burmese. That is a language that is available to translate from English, Italian, German, Portuguese, and also French.
And when do you think we might see these systems used widely, Giovanni? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, generally speaking, this is a new solution, but we already have 2 early adopters who are major broadcasters. What we have seen during COVID-19 is that corporations who now have to do corporate virtual events instead of in-person events, such as this event that we're doing right now, have requirements to do international accessibility for their participants. So any given day, there's 30 or more virtual events that are happening with this technology. It's just, there's a huge demand for it now, but it has still not become the norm. And I believe that as time goes by, this year we will see more and more people exploring live translation of their events.
Mm-hmm.
David, can I say something quickly?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what Gio just said, it sort of picks up on what the gaming industry has discovered, that we have been to presentations not that long ago where manufacturers have said there is no market. Where is the profit? Where is the bottom line on making accessible devices or accessible options? I think what we're seeing here, and it's really bad news that it's that people without disabilities that have had to have caused this change by the fact that we want translation, we want more, because as Bilal said, language is a bigger barrier for virtual meetings than it is for face-to-face meetings, where expression and closer contact and the ability to go and ask someone again is much easier. There is profit in this. There is a major business in this, and I don't blame Gio and SyncWords for diving in there. I think what our role is, and especially in the ITU, and I've said this before, is not to deal with this in the way that is in a business sense, but is to actually make sure there are some common headline standards. That means that companies can interchange information just like they interchange the contents that we want to make accessible. Without those standards before, we could not sell our programs, or your TV will be different in different countries. I think our job is to actually make sure that SyncWords will work with anybody in the world, or an another company wishes to go into business with against them, can do exactly the same. This is about utilizing the market to actually say the market out there is 1 billion and growing. Actually, that is, I think, is an underestimate, because if you consider age-related issues, we're probably approaching 2.5 to maybe even 3 billion within the next few years.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's coming up to 2 o'clock, but maybe we just have a few final words from each of the panelists, please. But what do you think is the most critical issue at the moment for you in our discussions of accessibility profiles, personalization, AI, and COVID? So should we start with Pradipta? What do you think is the most important thing at the moment, the most important development at the moment?
I think, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Right. So I think it's most critical is that how it will be accepted by industries, like whether the industry really willing to share information or cooperate on providing accessibility services. I believe still there is a notion that accessibility is something like an add-on service, and many times people are more interested on a proprietary product. So I am, from a university standpoint, I think it's the goodwill of industries and their willingness to provide a common format for sharing accessibility services and work together.
Okay. Andy, would you have something to add to that? A most important thing at the moment?
Other than the fact batteries that last longer on my my mobile phone, because that was my camera for this, which is just, as you see, I've disappeared. But other than that, no, I think the key thing is to work together, standardize, and to make interconnectivity the way that we actually increase the value of these services, and to recognize it is personal and not try to make everybody fit the same model.
Indeed, and hopefully the purpose of the IRG-AVA is to help to achieve that interconnectivity.
Yeah.
Giovanni, what do you think is the most important thing at the moment in terms of issues and steps that might be taken?
Yeah, at least from my perspective here in the United States, legislation has played a big role in the quality of closed captioning. For many years, there was no real quality guidelines for captioning, so especially for live or even pre-recorded videos, until someone stepped in and created these quality guidelines. The same thing is being seen today with virtual meetings, for example. There's no quality guidelines for displaying captions in virtual meetings. Each system displays them differently, and sometimes they don't display them at all. And they don't support multiple languages. Like, for example, in this case, with this platform that we're using, we can only see and overlay the captions in one language, and they're not displayed in the most optimal, most accessible way. So new regulations, as well as new quality guidelines, and educating the private sector and platforms on how that is best deployed is critical.
Yes, very true. And the world is, of course, depending more and more on virtual meetings. Masahito, and then perhaps Pilar can rehearse some comments while he's talking. Masahito, what do you think is the most? You've heard about making these things acceptable by industry, the interconnectivity, legislation, and so on, and regulation. What do you think is the most important thing?
I think they're all important, very important. Interconnectivity, interoperability is very important, and also regulation has a lot to do with it. And also, I think we need, as you mentioned, David, about the privacy issue. Mm-hmm. And data protection should be also considered in the context of accessibility and vulnerability. And also, I think one important thing is the discrepancy. I mean, differences in the development stage of each country, many different countries. So we have to consider how to combine old technologies with new ones, like AI, artificial intelligence, and automatic translation with the more older traditional approach to accessibility as well.
Oh, this
For
is
example,
very
like SMS.
Yeah. In fact, I looked some years ago at the difference in technology across European countries alone, and that came to about a staggering 30-year gap. But Pilar, you have some sensible things to say.
No, I agree with all of you. Interoperability, of course, standardization is basic. And the idea to understand the difference between large and small, large languages, small languages, large communities, small communities, and personalization. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, well, I think we're about at the end. A quick summary, of course, is that we heard from Pradipta about the development of profiles for individuals, about their needs and their differences that might serve the content industry. And of course, he pointed us to the difficulties of it, and of course one of them is probably this privacy issue that needs to be looked at. And he said, of course, that these approaches have to be acceptable to industry, which, of course, we then moved to Andy, who talked about his idea that really we should be thinking in terms of personalization for differences and not serving people with disabilities, and that there may be common menus. And I was particularly struck by the tactile shirt. And I think even though I don't have those problems, I'd really love to get one of those from him afterwards, if he can remember that. You're
doing nightclubs, David?
Sorry. Yes, I have to go to a nightclub, I suppose. Yes. Giovanni, thank you so much. That was a really super demonstration. We loved it. All we can hope is that it becomes more and more widely available. And with your help, it will be. And of course, Masahito, please keep up the work, keep carrying the torch and developing systems and promoting what should be done. So thank you all very much for your contributions. If I may, I'd just like to say that we have our next meeting of IRG-AVA in October, and you can find the details on the ITU website, itu.int. And please, if you'd like to take part in these demonstrations there. But I have also to thank the incredible staff, the people who've been running this. Actually, I didn't do anything. I just sort of sat here, and really all the work in the past was done by Kaoru Mizumi. I'm not sure if she's still with us. Yes, she is, but she doesn't have her camera on. But really, she did everything, and it was really great. Thank you so much from all of us. I also have to thank Rochelle, of course, for doing the captions, and the normal team at the ITU that helps us run the group, which includes Simao, Ruting, and Stefano. The two people who've helped us today in the back room, Vladimir and Anastasia. Thank you so much. And of course, you, the audience. Do stay safe. But before leaving, we have just to show you a short video, which the WIS would like you to know about how the people who've helped make this WSIS possible. So can we roll that video, please? Is there supposed to be sound on this? Or? Thank you. No sound. So thank you all for taking part, and stay safe. And we're now closing the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you very much.